Good morning, everybody. This is Imelda.
And this is Ken here. To start off with, the Society News for Friday the 4th of August 2017. On Tuesday, the strollers will be meeting this Tuesday the 8th of August. The stroll will be at Blackberry Lane Cows, with lunch afterwards at the Woodville, booked for 12:30 p.m. The group will meet for coffee at Churchill's, Northwood, at 10:45. The starting point will be at Park Road Cows, between Princess Street and Victoria Road junctions. The minibus will depart from Millbrook House at 9 a.m. The stroll itself will take approximately 20 minutes. There is no introducing Millbrook House this month, but this will resume next month. The Dolphins group will be meeting to swim on Tuesday the 8th of August at the Waterside Pool Ride. The pool is closed to the public during the session. If you would like to go swimming, please call the Society first to advise us of your level of swimming ability. Please note lifeguards are in attendance during the session. Wednesday, there are no coffee mornings during August. The coffee mornings will resume on Wednesday the 6th of September. The Owls won't meet during August. The group will resume their meetings on Wednesday the 13th of September. Thursday, the Knitters and Natterers won't be meeting during August. The group will resume their meetings on Thursday the 7th of September. Any other news? Well, the Society will have a stall at the Chale Show this weekend, so please come along and say hello. The Owls will be going on their summer outing to Ventnor Botanic Garden on Wednesday the 16th of August during the afternoon. There are still places available on the trip. The cost of the trip will be £9.50 per person and includes entry to the garden, an escorted guided tour, approximately 1 hour, and a hot drink and slice of cake in their cafe. If you would like to go with the Owls to the Ventnor Botanic Garden, then please call the Society on 522205 by Thursday the 10th of August at the latest. The Knitters and Natterers will be going on an outing on the Thursday 24th of August to Quor Abbey for lunch. There are still a limited number of available seats on the minibus. If you are interested in going and would like to join the group, please contact the Society as soon as possible on 522205.
And now we have the scaffolding news. Please find below a list of known footway obstructions for works including scaffolding or hoarding. We are unable to include the end dates, as many are extended on a week-by-week basis. Also included are tables and chair permits that have been issued in the past week. In the Bay Area, Lloyd's Bank, Regent Street, Shanklin, and 32 Melvin Street, Sandown. New scaffolds, 23 York Road, Sandown, is due up on the 8th of August. In the Cowes area, development site Castle Street, East Cowes, Royal British Legion, 85 High Street, Cowes, Jam & Sons, Thetis Road, Cowes, Regent House, Market Hill, Cowes, and current hoardings are 272 to 283 Arctic Road, Cowes, and 93 High Street, Cowes. And new scaffolds are in 5 Mill Hill Road, Cowes, due up on the 7th of August, the Cooperative Funeral Care, 8 Ferry Road, East Cowes, due up on the 14th of August. A new scissor lift That word should be scissor lift. Waitrose, Well Street, East Cowes, due up on the 14th of August. Footway to be closed. Bus stop to be out of action and may be relocated. Newport area. Nippert Court, West Street, Newport. Stead and Simpson, 121 High Street, Newport. 38 Key Street, Newport. And current hoardings are Home Bargains, Taylor Road, Gunville Road, Carisbrooke. And new scaffolds are 2 Chapel Street, Newport, due up on August the 8th. 10 to 12 Ludley Street, Newport, due up on the 14th of August. And in the Ryde area, Ryde Street Gallery, 129A High Street, Ryde. St Mary's Church, Ryde, along St Mary's Passage. Oasis Dental Care, 9 Melville Street, Ryde. Saltmere Cottage, Blewett Avenue, Seaview. 77 George Street, Ryde. Kimberley Madeira Road, Seaview. And 24 Nelson Road, Ryde. In South Wight, 15 High Street, Ventnor. And in West Wight, Cornerways, the Broadway, Totland. The King's Head, Key Street, Yarmouth. And this week's In Touch. In Touch in this week's episode, what's the best approach when it comes to holidays for blind and partially sighted people? Travel Eyes is a company which takes both blind and sighted people on holiday. The visually impaired traveller pays full price, and the fully sighted person pays up to 50% of the full cost and agrees to guide and describe the attractions for the visually impaired travellers. But what if you have an additional need like hearing impairment? The travel company says that in some cases, customers who have an additional need will have to take someone along as a carer. Peter Wight speaks to the company's founder, Armour Latif, about this policy. Circus staff provides children who wouldn't normally have the opportunity to experience the circus a chance to do so, and their audio describing the experience for young audition members. We find out from a professional audio describer how narrating a performance for children differs from adults.
These headlines for this week from the County Press. Staff crisis not over yet, Wight Link. Wight Link has not ruled out further ferry cancellations at the height of the holiday season, blaming a shortage of skilled staff for a spate of scrapped sailings. It has sparked fury on social media, with people questioning the firm's management and renewing calls for a fixed link. Matt Wickham posted on Facebook, Wight Link need to sort this out. It's basic management not having had enough staff. On Tuesday, the 6:30 a.m., 8:30 a.m. and the 10:30 a.m. car ferry sailings from Portsmouth and the 9:30 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. from Fishbourne were cancelled. Last Saturday, 8 sailings were cancelled on the same route. It follows more cancellation last month, again due to staff shortages. 4 sailings were cancelled on the Yarmouth to Fishbourne route on Wednesday due to an engine cooling problem on one of the ferries. The County Press has asked to interview Wight Link Chief Executive Keith Grinfield, but was told he was unavailable. A spokeswoman said of its 14 engineers, 2 were on sick leave, 1 on compassionate leave, and 3 on annual leave. She said 2 new chief engineers and 2 engineering officers who would be trained as chief engineers had been recruited. We can't say how long the situation is going to continue. colleagues are trying to make it work, but sometimes something has got to give, and a couple of sailings have had to be cancelled. We are sorry for the inconvenience caused, she said. However, Misha, I should say, Kolovsky commented on the County Press Online. The real question is, why does Whitelink have these staffing problems? It's not as though they have introduced new crossings which need staffing. Quite the opposite. In fact, the retirements are entirely predictable. Andrew Davis added, "Not again. How long must we suffer these awful service levels?"
And now inside the paper we have an exclusive by Hayden Taylor. Our new ferry is a laughingstock too. It's not just the Cowes floating bridge that has been beset by problems since coming into service. It has emerged the £5.7 million Strangford ferry in Northern Ireland, designed by the same architects, Burness Corlett Three Keys, BCTQ, suffered similar problems when it came into service last October. Modifications costing £12,000 were required before that vessel was given the green light by the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency. Isle of Wight councillor Carl Love said, "I was shocked to learn the Strangford ferry, which was designed by the same company that designed ours, had such a similar issue with its prow that our prow is still causing problems now. I'm surprised ours had similar issues given the learning BCTQ should have had from that instance in Ireland, and I'm hoping we're going to get our prow fixed quickly and soon." Floating Bridge number 6 has been described as a catalogue of failures since its launch in May, facing problems such as mechanical failures, repeatedly grounding at low tide, and cars scraping their bumpers when going on and off. Councillor Gareth Sharvin, a member of the Newry, Mourne and Down District Council in Northern Ireland, told the County Press, "For a lot of people, the new ferry became a laughingstock. This new ferry broke down within a matter of weeks. It was pushed back for its launch. It broke down and encountered new issues. The confidence in the new ferry is probably as low as the old one was, and I think until we have a consistent 6 months with no issues being encountered, that's when residents will say it's been a good thing for us." When approached by the County Press, BCTQ declined to comment on either Floating Bridge number 6 or the Strangford ferry. And this goes on with formal complaint over chain's depth. Cowes Harbour Commission has issued a formal complaint to the Isle of Wight Council over the reduction in navigable depths around Floating Bridge. Since the introduction of Floating Bridge number 6, passing vehicles have seen a reduction of 0.5 metre when navigating the River Medina at that point, due to the depth of the floating bridge chains. Just last week, 3 yachts collided with them in one evening. The chains are due to be adjusted next week. Cowes Harbour Master Captain Stuart McIntosh said, "This is important for the long-term commercial viability of the harbour. We're working with the Isle of Wight Council, but we will not compromise on a long-term reduction in that depth. And the Council needs to understand the importance not just for the yachtsmen, but for the commercial and economic viability of the island. Cowes is the only deep-water commercial port for bringing bulk goods onto the island."
Hospital drinks machine scars woman for life. An investigation is underway after a woman was scarred for life by a hospital coffee machine while waiting to see a doctor. Laura Haytack of Pile Seat, Newport, was in absolute agony after the incident late on Saturday, July the 22nd. The 25-year-old had attended the urgent care service, formerly Beacon, at St Mary's after an infection she was being treated for she took a turn for the worse. She got a coffee from the nearby machine to pass the 2-hour wait, but she was scalded by the boiling liquid which overflowed from the machine and suffered second-degree burns. The doctor said her blistered hand would be scarred for life, and she has suffered nerve damages which may repair within a month. Laura, who works as a publishing manager at Gresham Books, said it was extremely painful. It was absolute agony. The water shouldn't have been that hot, so I think the machine was faulty. I had taken time off work to do a course, so it was a nightmare timing as I struggled with the written exam and physical tests I had to complete due to my bandaged hand. Beg your pardon. If a child had gone to get a drink from the machine, it could have burned their face. It really was an accident waiting to happen. A spokesman for the Isle of Wight NHS Trust said, "We treated the individual involved and the hot drinks machine has immediately marked out as out of order. We are undertaking a full investigation and will be in touch with the individual concerned as soon as our inquiries are complete."
80 islanders helped by transplants. 80 people on the Isle of Wight are alive thanks to organ transplants, according to the National Health Service Blood and Transplant Team. On the island, the number of people on the organ donor register has increased by 26% over the past 5 years. There are now 56,919 islanders on the register, compared to 45,230 5 years ago. Last year, 12 people on the island had transplants, compared to 6 people 5 years ago. The organisation is urging more islanders to sign up, particularly people from Asian and black backgrounds, as there is a shortage. To join the register, visit www.organdonation.nhs.uk.
Work on 4G for Wootton. High-speed mobile internet coverage is coming to Wootton thanks to telecommunications giant O2. The mobile phone network has revealed it has begun work this week to bring its 4G service to the village, as well as improving its 2G and 3G network. Work is set to begin on Monday, August the 14th, and subject to successful tests, customers will be able to use the new service in the following weeks. During the works, users are being warned that there could be times when signals are intermittent. People can download the OT2U Go app, which enables them to make and receive calls on any Wi-Fi connected device using their mobile number. More information can be found at www.o2.co.uk/apps/2u-go.
Batteries stolen from traffic lights. The theft of more than 50 batteries from temporary traffic lights across the Isle of Wight has prompted a police appeal for witnesses. The batteries, which were stolen last weekend costs more than £3,000 to replace. They were taken from Ryde, Newchurch, Cowes and Freshwater. There are 4 batteries per light and each costs around £80. In total, 52 batteries have been stolen, affecting 13 lights. HSS Hire and Traffic Management, which supplied the lights, said, "Not only is this a huge theft, but it is also dangerous as it leaves travellers head-to-head around roadworks. Anyone with information should contact the police on 101. It gives a long number to quote, but I'm sure if you explain it's about the batteries, the police will seek it out."
Drink driver tried to escape from police officers. A man spotted driving erratically under the influence of drink tried to flee when stopped by police. Wayne Travers, 31, of Westminster Lane, Newport, admitted drink driving when he appeared before the island magistrates. The court was told Travers was seen by police at around 4 a.m. on July the 9th, driving his Volkswagen through a red light. Police followed his vehicle, which swerved over a white line and eventually stopped in Pyle Street. Travers ran off before being arrested and taken to Newport Police Station, where he gave a reading of 91 milligrams. The legal limit is 35. Representing Travers, Barry Arnett, said his client regretted his mistake, saying it was a stupid decision. He had been using alcohol as a crutch, as he had not seen his son for 2 months, but was now getting help. Magistrates disqualified Travers, who is a bricklayer by trade, from driving for 23 months and sentenced him to a 6-month community order. He also was fined £100 and ordered to pay £85 costs and an £85 surcharge.
Cyclist fighting for life after crash. A cyclist was airlifted to Southampton General Hospital after sustaining life-threatening injuries following a collision. Police were called to Arthur's Hill, Shanklin at 2:14 p.m. last Friday to reports of a collision involving a cyclist. Officers found a 57-year-old man with life-threatening head injuries. He was first taken to St Mary's Hospital, Newport, and then airlifted to Southampton. A police spokesperson said, "Officers are trying to establish exactly what happened to cause the cyclist to come off his bike and would like to hear from anyone who may have seen the cyclist prior to the incident or anyone who witnessed it." The cyclist was riding a dark-coloured bike. If you have any information relating to this case, please call 101. Again, there's a very long number, but I'm sure if you mention the cyclists, they'll contact. Or you can contact Crime Stoppers anonymously.
Vandals strike at Cowes. A clean-up operation was launched during Cowes Week after a mindless act of vandalism along Cowes Esplanade. In the early hours of Wednesday morning, bins had been overturned and one had been put on top of an ornamental lamppost. Litter was strewn across the green and a lifebuoy had been taken from its housing and thrown over another lamppost. A resident who wished to remain anonymous said, "When I was walking along the green, island roads were already clearing away the litter from around 10 bins and were overturned or emptied. One bin was somehow placed over the 4-metre Victorian lamppost, and a lifebuoy had also been thrown over another column. Not only did it make the esplanade look like Lynn-Bottom Tip, but was also highly responsible to put a lifebuoy out of action at such a busy time. Fortunately, Island Lights were swiftly on the scene to clear up the rubbish and replace the lifebuoy before the green work became too busy. But it was a mindless act of vandalism that should not have been created a really bad impression of the town, as well as putting lives at risk. An Island Road spokesperson said, "We have additional crews working in the town during Cows Week, and the litter was cleared away as part of the cleansing taking place this morning."
Tatler recommends an island getaway. High Society magazine Tatler has branded the island as the hottest seaside getaway right now, despite the expensive ferry fares. The prestigious magazine published an article called "Why the Isle of Wight is the hottest seaside getaway right now" online, with writer Celia Thursfield recommending the best places to go, eat and stay. Osborne House, the Garlic Farm, the Pilot Boat Inn in Bembridge, the George in Yarmouth and the Little Gloucester in Gurnard all featured. Thursfield described the hut in Colwell as bringing a hint of Club 55 to the west coast of the island. The hut has beachy rustic charm down to a T. The vibe is delightfully relaxed. You can even turn up in your boat and they'll send a tender to fetch you. Phew! Gallons of rosé are a given and the grilled lobster is yum. And if you were so inclined to read the whole article, you can read it at tinyurl.com/YCGQZWPU.
Disappointment as Carr pulls out, is this headline. Top British comedian Jimmy Carr has been forced to cancel 2 shows on the island later this month due to his increased television commitments. The stand-up star, who fronts the TV comedy show 8 out of 10 Cats, was due to perform back-to-back shows at Shanklin Theatre on Saturday, August 26th. The sold-out shows, part of the Best of Ultimate Gold Greatest Hits Tour, have been rescheduled from Saturday, February the 10th next year. The announcement follows cancellation for other shows at the venue. Jasper Cadder, who is having heart bypass surgery this month, is rescheduling his September 24th show for a date in March 2018. And Chas and Dave, after singer and pianist Chas Hodges was diagnosed with cancer. The theatre's booking manager, Vic Farrow, said, "We've had to cancel various shows for all sorts of reasons this year, which is as disappointing to us as it must for the fans. We have had to individually contact 1,200 people who bought tickets for Jimmy Carr, but the tickets they bought are still valid for his shows in February. For ticket information, call the box office on 868-000 or go to www.shanklintheatre.com for more details.
New soft blue cheese launched by Isle of Wight Company. The Isle of Wight Cheese Company has revealed its latest creation, Blue Slipper. In a Facebook announcement, the award-winning company said, "Super happy to announce a new cheese. Blue Slipper is a pasteurized, naturally rinded, soft blue cheese. It is a much softer version of Isle of Wight Blue, but with no internal veining, and is named after the famous galt clay that we found on our beautiful island. This is a test batch in the shops across the Isle of Wight. We will launch this cheese officially in 2018. The company described the flavour as mushroomy, with camembert notes and a blue flavour too."
Yacht Club hosts a day out on the water for disabled. More than 140 guests visited the Royal Victoria Yacht Club Fishbourne during its open day for people with disabilities. Visitors took more than 60 trips onto the Solent in a range of boats. Fast RIBs went to Osborne Bay, and the Spirit of Scott Barder, a specially adapted yacht, took wheelchair users out onto the Solent. On shore, guests were treated with a barbecue, ice creams, cakes and refreshments. Music was provided by Bob's Basement Band. The organising committee was supported by more than 90 volunteers on shore and the owners, skippers and crews of 11 boats lent by the members and community organisations on the creek.
Extra cash to help healthcare. A pooled fund of £35.9 million will help join up healthcare and adult social care on the island. The Isle of Wight Clinical Commissioning Group, CCG, which purchases health services for the island, will work in partnership with the Isle of Wight Council to arrange sustainable health services for residents. The partners were required to sign up to the Better Care Fund national scheme with £18.7 million coming from the CCG for the 2017 to 18 fund. A one-off of £6.5 million from the government and the rest from the council. The organisations are still working on the final plan, which should be finished by late September.
Cows awash with celebrities. Celebrities dropped in on Lendy Cows Week, with VIPs invited by organisers to a ladies' day party at Northwood House on Tuesday night. Actor James Norton, best known for roles in the TV series Happy Valley, Grantchester and War and Peace, has been at Cows Week sailing on the Volvo ocean race boat Scallywag. TV presenter and West End star Denise Van Outen made an appearance with partner Eddie Boxall, sailing with Team Jolokia on a Volvo Ocean 60. Model and TV personality Joni Kidd dropped in on to support Ladies' Day and celebrate women in sailing. She has been sailing on Cows Week biggest yacht, the 30-metre CQS Super Maxi, competing in the new 7-star Triple Crown races, a big boat mini series. Ben Fogle has also been in town. The adventurer, broadcaster and writer was here with New Zealand winery Cloudy Bay, for which he is a brand ambassador.
Accident fears over jet skiers. Jet skiers riding close to Shanklin Beach have raised fears swimmers could be badly injured if they are hit. The high-powered craft are not allowed to go closer than 200 yards to the shore, but buoys which used to mark the boundary went missing 2 years ago, Shanklin Town councillors heard at their meeting last Thursday. Mayor Councillor John Gilby said, "We could end up with a bad accident." Speaking after the meeting, Shanklin Isle of Wight Council member Councillor Chris Quirk said nobody knew where the buoys were, but if they were found, the Isle of Wight Council would consider installing them again at the beginning of next year's summer season.
Porn did not harm smiling child victims, is this headline. A waterman said he believed child pornography he downloaded did not cause harm to the children featured because they were smiling and they were not British, Isle of Wight Crown Court heard. Mark Bennett, 52, of Holford Road, pleaded guilty to downloading hundreds of indecent images of children, including 240 still images and 11 videos of the most serious category. An investigation into Bennett's internet history showed a sexual interest in teenagers. Mike Mason, prosecuting, told the court. Defending Bennett, Simon Moja said his client had no previous convictions and he was aware that he needed to better understand his behaviour and the consequences of his actions. Deputy Circuit Judge John Price said the images included young children of 4 to 6 years old. You didn't consider them to be in harm because they were smiling. You thought they were different because they were non-British. People like you, looking at this filth, encourage others to produce this material. God knows what effect it has on these children when they grow up. Do you understand what you have done? Bennett was given 12 months prison sentence, suspended for 18 months, and was ordered to carry out 150 hours unpaid work, attend 34 days of rehabilitation activities, and pay £425 costs and £100 surcharge. He was also subject to a sexual harm prevention order of 5 years and was placed on the sex offenders register.
Ferry staff's taxi help for stick boy. A mother has praised Red Funnel for ensuring her son got to his chemotherapy appointment despite mechanical failures. Denise Ibrahim, 46, of Alfred Road, Lake, was with her 12-year-old son, Edis, on the 7 a.m. ferry last Tuesday when a ramp failure left her car stranded on the upper deck. Edis suffers from leukemia and was on his way to a hospital appointment at Southampton General Hospital. When staff became aware of this, they got Denise and her son off the ferry and paid for a taxi to and from the hospital. While at the hospital, the staff dealt with the car, which she later collected from Southampton. Denise said, "The staff were brilliant. They had a taxi waiting when we got off the ferry and again when we finished the appointment. I left my keys with a woman called Kat, and when I returned to Southampton, my car was waiting for me and they put me on the next ferry back. They kept in constant contact, texting me to make sure we were okay and to let me know what was happening with my car. I cried. I don't know why, but it's emotional when people act so kindly. Denise said staff acted quickly once the mechanical failure became apparent, supplying water and sun cream for stranded passengers. She uses Red Funnel regularly and said staff have always gone above and beyond for her and Eddie's. She said, the staff recognise him. In the past they've given him little gifts, and he's even been allowed to steer the boat. Some people complain about the ferries, but they've always been wonderful to me.
Environmental catastrophe fears. There are fears that landslip behind East Cowes Esplanade could sever a sewage pipe, sending raw effluent cascading into the sea. A Southern Water sewage pumping station above the landslip could also be at risk of collapsing, according to the Isle of Wight councillor. Speaking at a meeting of East Cowes Town Council, Carl Love said, we have to take action soon to prevent the pumping station from collapsing. If we don't, we will end up with the environmental catastrophe. He called for both Southern Water and the Isle of Wight Council to work together to solve the problem. Fellow Isle of Wight Council member Councillor Julia Baker-Smith added she had spoken to Southern Water and had learned there was one sewage pipe which was between 15 feet and 20 feet away from the landslip. In the event of a further slip, an alert would be sent back to Southern Water, which would shut down the pipe, said Councillor Baker-Smith.
Another witness plea, this time after a boy was hurt. A 10-year-old boy was treated in hospital following a collision last Friday. Police officers were called to Newport Road, Cowes, just outside the Cowes Medical Centre, at around 5 p.m. to reports of a collision involving a car and a child. The boy suffered a serious leg injury and was taken to St Mary's Hospital. The female driver of a blue Ford Fiesta was uninjured. PC John Davis said, "We would like to speak to anyone who may have seen the collision so we can establish exactly what happened. Anyone with information can contact us on 101. Again, there's a very long number, but maybe if you mentioned John Davis. Or Crime Stoppers anonymously on 0800 555 111.
Boulder idea, Mrs. Headline. Boulders could be placed on Gurnard Green to stop cars from rolling down the hill towards the children's play area. Gurnard Parish Council and the Isle of Wight Council are looking at possible solutions such as anchoring boulders on the green or putting up a safety barrier. Parish councillors identify a risk of vehicles potentially rolling down the green towards the play area below.
And with that, we're going to say goodbye to you and hope you have a lovely weekend. Goodbye from Imelda.
Bye-bye from me, Ken. Bye.
We'll now read the second half of the County Press, and this is Jan.
And I'm Stephen.
And we'll start with the letters. French example from Peter Mitchell, Ventnor. The proponents of a fixed link might care to consider France's Ile de Ré. The Ile de Ré is an island in the Bay of Biscay off La Rochelle. It is considered the sunniest place in France. Since the opening of the road toll bridge, the roads and byways have become choked with camper vans from spring until late autumn.
And now a letter from Mr. Bill Moore of Gunville, headlined, "Where would this superhighway emerge on island?" I wish to comment on the report "Fixed Linked Plans to be Heard by Council" in the County Press of the 14th of the 7th. My concern is not with the content, rather the artist's impression of how the fixed link could look. This shows a dual carriageway, no toll booths, just an open road with only 3 vehicles in sight. The propaganda behind this is to imply a bright future of seamless travel to the mainland compared with the present system of car ferries. What is not explained is where this road would be built, how long it will be, and what happens when it is connected to our overloaded single-track system. At present, the ferries carry on average 5,700 vehicles per day, dispersed across 3 ports. An earlier claim by the Fixed Link Group was the tunnel would create an average of nearly 13,000 vehicles movements a day, all to one location. Before the Council commits any money towards carrying out this survey, it needs to ask a simple question: how will the present road system cope?
And do not imprison our kids, says Eleanor Thornbury. Sorry, this is a letter from Steve Willingham of Ryde in response to an article by Eleanor Thornbury. Recently, in the county press, we've been treated to, among other things, an outpouring of support for our homophobic ex-MP, a lamentation on the state of chips these days, and enough misinformed rhetoric around fixed links to sink the island permanently. I believe, however, that following the publication of Eleanor Thornbury's letter in the county press of the 28th of July, we have finally reached peak islander. Her rambling diatribe about the insouciance of youth, namely those under the age of 10 having the gall to visit the mainland, was quite the most island-centric thing I have ever had the misfortune to read. But let's set aside for a moment her lack of tolerance for those on the younger side of 10, her outrage that parents should even entertain the idea of widening their offspring's horizons, and her unwavering belief pretty much all children is an inconvenience. Instead, let's focus on the real issue here. I refer, of course, to the victim of the piece, her poor 9-year-old grandson. Not only was he forced to attend an RHS event, something reserved for those of us who have truly lost the will to live, but this as actually his first ever trip to the mainland. Pity this poor child forced to witness the serried ranks of the recently retired as they cluck, coo and swoon in a floral stupor. His dreams will forever be haunted by visions of daffodils, dahlias and delphinium, roses entwining him in their thorny branches, creeping buddleia smothering him in their violet embrace. Actually, come to think of it, maybe I should agree with Madame Thornbury. This nightmarish trip to GB, that's Great Beyond, obviously, must cause enough trauma to put him off returning ever again. I jest, of course. In truth, it's up to us to broaden our children's horizons, to make them aware that, as beautiful as it is, this fair isle is but a tiny part of a much larger world. For myself, I took my daughter on a 1,000-mile round trip to Wales and beyond when she was just 4 months old. 4 years later, and we've travelled the length and breadth of the UK and beyond. And I will continue to broaden her horizons in this manner, much as we'll continue to visit Osborne House, Bigmead or Robin Hill and other local attractions. The island can be a wonderful place to raise a child, but then so can the rest of the world.
And a letter on the same subject from Alan Chase of Gosport, headlined More Fun. I read with much amusement the letter from Eleanor Thornbury. She states her grandson was miserable, but can you be surprised? For a first trip off the island, he would probably have rather gone to Chessington, Thorpe Park, or even a look around Portsmouth Dockyard. If she thinks children under 10 should be made to stay on the island, what if mainlanders thought the same way? The island would be about 60% down on visitors. I think the boy's mother had it right. Taking him to a gardening event was not what 9-year-olds want. Her remarks about being tripped up by hosts of mothers and prams on the catamaran just about sums up the dear lady. She should keep her eyes and mind open to the real world.
And here's a letter from Councillor Jeff Brodie, Isle of Wight Council Member for Newport East, Newport. Thanks for covering the scandal of the inexplicable estate service charge increases for 400 plus Pan Meadows. That was in the County Press of the 28th of July. It deserves to be publicised after the months of pressure I have been exerting upon their directors from Barrett's Sovereign Housing Association and the Isle of Wight Council, and their managing agents, ERMC. Pressure for more transparency and accountability to residents, all to little avail. As an Isle of Wight councillor, always trying his best to represent his community, there is only so much influence I can have on a private company. Pan Manco is supposedly set up to act in the community interest, but after initially refusing to discuss the increases with me, promises were subsequently made to me in the presence of a resident that are still undelivered many weeks later. One thing is for certain, this matter is not going away.
And now a letter from Councillor Ian Broad of Shalfleet, headlined Eyes Opened to Parish Problems. I recently joined Shalfleet Parish Council as a co-opted member. I was happy to do so, but as a long-term resident in the area, I was critical of the council I was about to join. How could the Parish Council allow industrial-style development to take place at Winchester Corner? How could the council allow a parking mess to develop at the corner? How could a dangerous parking chaos have been allowed to develop outside the school? There were a number of other areas that made me uneasy. It seems some of my criticisms have been ill-founded and have been directed at the wrong bodies. Local residents might be interested in some of my revised thinking, the more so as residents' money is involved. Nationally, inquiry after inquiry tells us different bodies do not share information or do not cooperate with each other. This usually comes to light after some dramatic incident. We are then told we must learn from the findings. Sadly, I have discovered problems of poor communication and lack of cooperation do exist on the Isle of Wight too. As an example, I draw attention to Winchester Corner. This is a rural area, so what on earth were planning doing when they allowed industrial-style developments to take place? We have industrial estates designed to keep industry apart from rural areas. However, don't, as I did, place the bulk of the blame on the parish council. Cars are now parked on grass verges there. As somebody has commented, you now enter a beautiful village through what appears to be a scrapyard. The verge is owned by the Isle of Wight Council. In turn, the Isle of Wight Council has signed a contract and delegated responsibility to Island Roads. The contract requires maintenance of roads, verges, pavements, etc. However, we now get into the small print. The installation of bollards to protect and maintain the verge is not considered to be maintenance per se. So who pays for the bollards and who pays for maintenance of the bollards? It is my view planning has some responsibility for allowing developments to take place in the first place, developments that clearly did not pay full regard to parking issues. Certainly, the Shalfleet Parish Community Plan of 2012 has been ignored. At that time, the majority of residents made it quite clear they did not want to see such sites within the parish. The Isle of Wight Council won't pay for anything extra. The Parish Council is using some of its precept to contain the damage to the verges. This will cost £1,240.14 for the bollards and £2,567.80 for maintenance. The parish picks up the bill because nobody else will. And those brown signs pointing to attractions need cleaning. This involves men climbing ladders. Island Roads say they will not do it and are passing on cleaning duties to the owners of the attraction. So we pay Island Roads to maintain the signs, but they expect others to do the work. Hopefully, nobody expects parish councils to pick up that particular bill. Why on earth can't different bodies talk to each other, cooperate and move towards common objectives? Still, if something significant does happen, I guess we can always have an inquiry. Meanwhile, don't blame the parish councils. As I've recently learned, they are not always at fault, but are increasingly expected to pick up pieces left by others.
And a letter from Loris Valvona of Ryde. The Isle of Wight Factor. The Isle of Wight Act Factor. The article in the County Press Weekender of the 28th of July about Bembridge Harbour claims this was the sole reason for MP Mark Woodnutt's remarkable defeat in the 1974 election. I would suggest there was another reason for this result, namely the young people of the island. Mr. Woodnutt had championed a bill called the Isle of Wight Act. This legislation effectively banned pop festivals on the island, and at the time that meant we were never again going to have the chance to see the world's greatest performance on our island. The young wanted revenge, and when the election was called, they turned out in their thousands to vote. This, coupled with the impressive Liberal campaign, which saw the island covered in orange Vote Ross posters, played a large part in a result that has gone down in history as one of the biggest ever general election upsets.
And now a letter from Alexander Hopkinson Woolley of Bembridge, headlined Dredging Vital. Thank you for the very informative article on Bembridge Harbour. The island needs a harbour in Bembridge that serves all users, not just rich celebrities, and dredging is still crucial for this. Improvement in this respect would be another step to support the regeneration campaign for the island.
And the letter of the week, progress made with campaign, from Brenda Bumstead of Northamptonshire. Thank you very much for the articles you have written about John's campaign. This is the campaign fighting for the right of every dementia sufferer in a hospital or a care home to be allowed the continuing care and presence of a family member or known carer day and night, similar to the rights of children and their parents in hospital. Your articles have made a difference. Not only has St Mary's Hospital signed up, but now some 8 homes on the island. I particularly want to say well done Totland and neighbouring Freshwater Bay. 4 of the homes which have signed up are in Totland and 1 in Freshwater Bay. Unfortunately, that means that in the rest of the island only 3 homes have signed up. Please may I implore the care homes in Ventnor, Shanklin, Bembridge, Wootton, Newport, East Cowes, Brading, etc. to follow the lead taken by Totland. Read all about John's campaign on our website and sign the pledge.
And now a letter from Mike Payne of Buckinghamshire, headlined Trains, Footy and a Bag of Scraps. Sadly, I lost my older brother Les back in May, and when things like that happen, it does make you look back on your life. I was thinking the other day what a typical Saturday was like for me living on the island in the late 1950s and early 60s. Les hated football. In fact, he hated sport of any sort. Music was always his thing. But one passion he did introduce me to was to take me regularly to Newport railway station. Not to catch a train, but to sit or stand on the platform watching the steam trains come and go in and out of the station and collect a few train numbers along the way in my exercise book. The station was always busy and exciting. I did love that place. You had to buy a platform ticket in those days, of course, although Les usually found a way to sneak in and avoid that particular cost. It was very rare in those days that a job's worth would appear, so Saturdays were taken care of with Saturday morning pictures at the Grand or the Medina, off to the station for a while, and then for me it was down to Church Lytton for the match. I didn't really care if it was first team or reserves, as long as there was a match on. I remember going into the ground as though it was yesterday, with a man in a little box at the entrance taking your 2 pennies for entrance, and then me and my mates would run round to see the pitch. The excitement for me was always the same and still is to this day some 60 years later, especially when I see the Port play. After the match we usually stopped off at Stotesbury's for a 4-penn'orth of scraps. All those scraps probably had something to do with the heart bypass I had a few years ago. If there was still enough light, then it was off to 9 Acres for a game of footy, or up to the castle to reenact the cowboy film or the war film we had seen earlier. What a busy and exciting childhood I had, and I wouldn't have swapped it for the world.
And now we move to the Looking Back column, starting 100 years ago. Commemorating 3 years since the start of the war to end all wars, the County Press ran an editorial retrospective on everything that happened since August the 4th, 1914. It read, "The appalling loss of life and treasure, the havoc and red ruin wrought on historic buildings, the vile and bestial cruelty of the Germans, the mistakes and muddles, and the glorious heroism. When reflecting on this and more, the action of the mind is checked with awe." And also 100 years ago, the notorious burglar Charles Williams, described as the greatest criminal mind of the Victorian era, and the Cabinet Minister criminal, was released from Parkhurst Prison after serving 20 years. He was condemned to a life sentence for wounding in connection with a daring burglary which he carried out at Lady Harberton's mansion in Kensington, London, which had been described as invulnerable.
75 years ago, on August the 1st, 1942, a resolution was to be sent to the Board of Education by the island's Education Subcommittee expressing members' concern at the hours young people between 14 and 20 had to work. Members thought youngsters were unable to use the recreation and educational facilities offered by the youth clubs. Those who worked in the shipyards were too tired after their long day's work to enjoy any of the facilities. And Shanklin gained a new ambulance and mobile canteen, courtesy of Australia, and celebrated with a grand presentation. The modern and fully equipped ambulance was subscribed for by the Royal Automobile Club of Victoria and was given to the Shanklin Division of the St John Ambulance Brigade. The mobile canteen was given to Shanklin branch of the Women's Voluntary Service by the inhabitants of King Island, Australia.
And 50 years ago, royal fever swept the island at Cowes Week, 1967, which was described as the most exciting and interesting in the post-war years. This was thanks to the presence of Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Charles and Princess Anne, and their participation in the racing. The royal presence at Cowes Week also made for an exceptionally well-attended event, with thousands of sightseers travelling to vantage points, hoping to catch a glimpse of the royal entourage. One evening, the Duke of Edinburgh was presented with a mammoth 25-pound solid salmon at a special dinner.
And 25 years ago, on July the 31st, 1992, it was revealed around 1 in every 18 properties on the island was vacant or unoccupied at the time of the April 1991 census. The census also found around 1 in every 21 was a holiday or second home. The island's resident population was found to be 124,577, up 5.6% on the previous census and down 15,923 on today's population. And also, records were smashed at the new look Isle of Wight Goat Club show. Show organisers did away with their usual format and instead introduced 9 novelty classes, including the worst udder and a fancy dress section. Secretary Angie Remnant said, "We did not know until quite late on if the show was actually going ahead and in what form. So we opted for a smaller number of classes, which attracted a record 42 goats and 96 entries."
And bringing us up to 10 years ago, a shark angler hooked a 500-pound monster, dwarfing anything he had caught in 30 years of fishing. The 14-foot 6-inch shark was caught about 5 miles off St Catherine's Point by Bembridge builder Danny Vokins after an epic battle lasting more than 2 hours. The fisherman, who releases everything he catches after tagging and photographing it, said it was 200 pounds heavier than his next biggest catch, which was about the size of a small car and would, in any other circumstance, be considered an exceptionally large fish. And also 10 years ago, a new extreme sports venture was looking to literally make waves in the Solent. Charlie Head set up Head Fast with the hope of enticing more people out onto the water to experience the thrills of wakeboarding and water skiing. The 28-year-old had bounced back from a bad wakeboarding accident when he injured his knee to set up the business and said he was on a mission to create an exciting water sports centre on the island. Charles Head is in the picture, is pictured with Josh Howell and Doug Newell on their boat.
And now the Wight Memories article. Headline: small but beautifully formed. Donna Newnham looks at a West Wight church, which is not all it may appear. Churches are not renowned for their comfort and warmth. So imagine if your only choice was to walk a couple of miles along rutted tracks to the mother church, or to make use of an iron shed on the square in which you froze in winter or boiled in summer. While the former may have suited younger people, there were many elderly folk who could not make the walk to All Saints Church in Freshwater. This was one of the reasons for the creation of the little thatched church of St Agnes in Freshwater Bay. Although the church looks as though it is hundreds of years old, it is in fact one of the more recent arrivals, having had its foundation laid in 1908. The appearance of age in the church comes from the building materials, most taken from a nearby derelict farmhouse, the former abode of renowned scientist and inventor Robert Hooke. One of the stones used on the exterior clearly shows a date of 1694, and it is this recycling of older masonry that leads visitors to consider the church as dating from the 17th century. The thatching is unusual and is the only example on the island. It was taken from a watercolour by the rector of Freshwater at the time, the Reverend A.J. Robertson, who was asked to consider the type of church he would like built. Land was donated from the Farringford estate by Hallam Lord Tennyson, who was the eldest son of the Poet Laureate. Money was raised by donation and the foundation stone was laid in August 1908 by Harold, the younger son of Lord and Lady Tennyson. The interior of the church has a rustic feel, simple bare walls and wooden ceiling panels lending to its feeling of age and history. Little has changed since it was built at the start of the 19th century. The beautifully carved chancel screen was added in the 1940s by the curate of Freshwater Parish, the Reverend Thomas Gardner Devitt, who crafted it himself and is also thought to have carved the altar table, choir stalls and rails. The old gas lighting was replaced by electric, and a new organ was installed in October 2007. Given its relative youth, there are only a few of the memorial plaques that normally adorn the walls of a church. One is for the novelist and biographer Anne Isabella Ritchie, who was the daughter of William Makepeace Thackeray.
On the north wall is a memorial for the goddaughter of the poet laureate Marjorie Lois Tennyson Macmillan, and on the south wall a dedication to the architect of St Agnes, Isaac Jones. Born in Carisbrooke, he died just 9 years after the church was dedicated. Standing on the edge of a field in the quieter end of Freshwater, the church is surrounded by wildlife. This can be seen best during the summer months, when the porch, paid for in entirety by Lady Tennyson in memory of her mother, becomes the home to returning house martins who nest there. Even though it is not much more than 100 years old, St Agnes has a sense of history and spirituality that has carried it through hard times. In 1994, it became recognised as a listed building by the then Department of National Heritage for its special architectural and historic interest. Inside the church, a board showing pictures of other thatched churches around the UK that, while St Agnes is not unique, it has a rarity that is beloved by both parishioners and visitors to the island alike.
And now we have the My View column, in which a panel of columnists take it in turn to give their take on life as it is played out on the Isle of Wight. The first of these is by Amy Mackeldon, headlined, "How are we supposed to get around?" Living in the sticks, I've always relied on public transport to get around. A decade ago, this wasn't a problem, with buses running early until late into the evening, meaning a cinema trip or dinner with friends wasn't totally out of the question. Fast forward to 2017, and the last bus from Newport to my house runs at 5:30, meaning if I have evening plans, I have to pay 20 quid or more for a taxi, or stay at home instead. Having lived in Newcastle for almost a decade before moving back to the island, I've been spoilt by frequently running metros, buses and trains. I got used to going anywhere at any time and thinking nothing of a late night workout at the gym or an impromptu cinema trip. Now, however, I've forcibly become a hermit, and as such, I'm learning to drive. Now I'm in my 30s, it's probably high time I learned to drive anyway, but I never needed to before. And if buses ran more frequently, I may never have started to learn. Thanks to Lisa Jane at Mike's School of Motoring, I'm gradually getting used to parallel parking, though I need a bit more practice reversing into a space. Luckily she's patient and totally hilarious, even when I unwittingly put her life in danger. As parts of the island are so remote, a car becomes a necessity, but there's something sad about not being able to rely on public transport should one want to. Many of the bus drivers on my route have driven the same route for a decade or more, and sometimes there's a sense of community on the island's buses, much unlike in the cities I've lived in. While there are definitely things I won't miss about public transport, it's a shame that cutbacks have made the island so much less accessible for several villages and the people living in them. The island's limiting bus service means I'll be getting a car soon. Sure, there are positives to that, such as, according to my boyfriend, the McDonald's drive-through. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't resent the fact I have to get a car if I want to carry on living where I do, when this wasn't always the case. Funding is limited, sure, but it's frustrating the only answer is more cars on the roads. And it's especially concerning those without their own means of transport are forced to rely on buses for hospital appointments, buying groceries, collecting prescriptions and attempting to socialise with friends. When there are only 5 buses a day to your village, with several hours to wait in between, How do people cope? In 2017, life should be more accessible than it is, particularly in a place that's a so-called holiday destination for so many.
And the second part of the My View page is by Jonathan Young with the title Bunting Out for Repulsive Islanders. Isle of Wight Day will soon be upon us, and feverish preparations, largely involving the retrieval from garden sheds of bunting advertising ferry companies, are already well underway. An exciting innovation this year will see the Best Dressed Village prize supplemented by a trophy for the first community to get the stuff down after midnight on September the 23rd. There will also, I'm certain, be many worthwhile and fun events, but I have to say the choice of date represents an opportunity missed. The island's finest hour, as students Corkhead history know very well, on July the 21st, 1545, when the earliest group of foreign tourists, a group of French matelots, found themselves repulsed by the locals. This tactic has been refined over the intervening half-millennium. Modern-day methods of repulsion include, but are not limited to, a Solent vehicle trafficking racket unrivalled, mile for mile, anywhere in the world. Word also has it that an official fact-finding mission to Oslo returned recently, having gathered valuable intelligence on fees charged there for using public loos. 20 Norwegian krone, or almost £2, at post-Brexit referendum conversion rates, and we may expect to see this method of repulsing visitors deployed in the next budget round. Isle of Wight deprivation for Isle of Wight people. In 1545, it was all very much more basic. The French came ashore at White Cliff Bay, Bembridge and Bonchurch. Details are sketchy, but they apparently tried to make their way to higher ground, only to find the locals had got there first and were ideally positioned to do the repulsing. Across the Solent, Henry VIII's navy was making more of a hash of seeing off the French. Days earlier, and right under his nose, his newly rebuilt flagship, the Mary Rose, with little apparent encouragement from the enemy, sank with huge loss of life. I think a reenactment of the island's part in these events, as a curtain raiser to the school holidays, would be entirely possible even within the confines of today's health and safety agenda. I am not so sure about climbing the scarp slope of St Boniface Down without modern-day aids, which is where one French detachment came to grief. But White Cliff Bay and Bembridge Harbour both suggest ideal settings. The whole area presents rolling fields covered with nothing but caravans, perfect cover from behind, which bare-chested sunburned mercenaries brought down from London and the Midlands can wage a sort of suburban guerrilla warfare with their slingshots or whatever. In Bembridge Harbour, the first line of defence will clearly be that tricky little footpath across to the Dover, with its tidal sluices, where at one point you have to take your socks and shoes off at high tide and paddle across. From a distance, the sight of dozens of men of St Helens apparently walking on water should be enough shock and awe for any marauding gang. Should the reenacted invasion prove more successful than the historical reality, the inroads Inroads are made into the eastern part of the island, the area known locally as Oasis will have to be stoutly defended. Were it to be overrun, the French would gain access to sufficient alternative sculpture art to scare the living daylights out of large swathes of the population, not to mention last year's Christmas decorations at a knockdown price. This would be a disaster. Something to work on then, perhaps, for 2018, for last year's High Sheriff Robin Courage, who I see is continuing to lead the Isle of Wight Day effort, and he has been asking for ideas. Mighty oaks from little acorns grow. You heard it here first, he says.
And now the behind the news article about education, and it's about the Isle of Wight County Technical School. Colin Attrell recently came across a photograph taken of a reunion in 1989, and it got him thinking. He reflects, in the current climate of fresh emphasis on vocational schools, the island was well ahead in the approach years ago. Soon after the last war, the County Council established the County Building School at East Cowes. The school took boys of school age and introduced them to the building industry. Many of the subjects had a building bias, and a substantial part of the week was given over to the four main trades. On leaving, the boys had a good start in the industry as tradesmen or in allied professions such as architecture or civil engineering. In the early 1950s, an engineering wing was added to the school, and it was renamed the County Technical School, where, in a similar fashion, a grounding in engineering was given. Many of the school leavers joined either J. Samuel White or Saunders Row. Colin of Haven Street finds it quite remarkable head teacher Alan Fisher was able to produce excellent results from such poor facilities. The main school was a disused primary school in Osborne Road. Its annex, a disused laundry in Kings Road, and the school hall and gym was East Cowes Town Hall. The playing field was at Victoria Recreation Ground, quite a distance away, and the galvanised pipe goalposts had to be collected from the waterboard depot across the road. And includes a photograph in 1989 in East Cowes Town Hall of boys from the early 50s with almost the whole of the teaching staff, including Alan Fisher.
And what's on this week? Party on the Green. That's on the Eastern Gardens Ride Esplanade on the 4th, 5th and 6th of August from 12:30 p.m. It's free entry, and they have face painting, Segway magician, children's games, dog show, dancers, choirs. Great fun for the whole family. There is a tea tent, barbecue, beer tent, live music and DJ, and that's run by the Ride Rotary, supported by the Ride Town Council.
And more Rotary Society fun. A family fun day on Sunday 13th of August at the Northwood County Showground between 10am to 5pm. It includes live music, dancing, arena events, displays, a car boot sale, craft stalls, a car display, agility dogs, a barbecue and bar, bouncy castle, ice cream, tea and cakes, and a dog show, side shows, falconry display, pony riders and archery. For more information on that, you can ring 01983 527 026. It has free entry to the car park.
And a DJ celebrates Elvis's music in sight and sound. Island DJ Dave Cannon of Solent City Sound has raised thousands of pounds for local charities. On Sunday, 13th of August, at the Signet Hotel, Sandown, he has a special night called Elvis 40, which features songs and videos of the rock and roll king who died 40 years ago. Admission is free, but patrons will be asked for donations to the Earl Mountbatten Hospice. Dave, who first began playing records to the public in 1968 at Ryde's La Babaloo nightclub, has been playing Elvis records since then, although he was a fan long before that. At the gig, Elvis can also be seen on the big screens, a popular feature of Dave's roadshow. For details, you can call 565 834 for more details.
And now, fancy a vintage weekend? Go to Calburn Watermill and walk into a 1940s world of old school vehicles and classic entertainment. Calburn Watermill will go all vintage next Saturday and Sunday with a special 1940s weekend. There will be steam engines, vintage vehicles, interactive displays, sweet stalls, candy floss and plenty of entertainment. The event, organised by the Vectis 40s Vintage Group, will be held in support of Isle of Wight Search and Rescue, as well as the Royal Naval Benevolent Trust. Head to Calburn Watermill between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. next Saturday, August the 12th and Sunday, August 13th for a family day out which everyone will enjoy. At the popular visitor attraction, parents and children can hear all about how the mill has operated over the years and sample the fruits of the mill's labour in the must-visit cafe restaurant. The mill's very own muesli, oats and flour are used in the kitchen to create dishes for you to enjoy on site. The Watermill's speciality cream teas have become a talking point among islanders. Enjoy one yourself in the beautiful surroundings by the stream. Families with children will love the Dragon Adventure golf course and the pedalo rides on the water. There's also a fun new clay play area, games, museums and a beautiful ancient woodland to explore. The museum has recently expanded with a new camera section and old televisions. Other upcoming events include the Ford Show and the opening of the golf course, which is almost complete. Parking is free.
And Bee Gees hits, falsetto voices and tight trousers will be staying alive on Wednesday when tribute band Jive Talking brings the sounds of the Bee Gees to Shanklin Theatre. Jive Talking are not just another Bee Gees tribute act, they are the only ones to have played with the original Bee Gees. Brothers Darren and Gary Simmons formed Jive Talking back in 1990, and in 1997 they performed with the original group on Heart FM, where they sang the 60s classic To Love Somebody. Then in 2014, Darren's son Jack joined the band as the third Gibb brother, Robin, making Jive Talking like the Bee Gees themselves, a truly family affair. The timeless repertoire of the Bee Gees is brought to life with authenticity and sincerity, creating a nostalgic journey through treasured musical memories. The 7-piece ensemble is fronted by Darren, Gary and Jack Simmons and backed by a full band, including a string section. The three men will deliver an evening of 60s classics such as Words, Massachusetts and How Do You Mend a Broken Heart, to 70s disco hits such as Night Fever and Stayin' Alive. Tickets for the event are available from the box office and the doors open at 7 p.m. for a 7:30 start. And that's about all we have got time for today, so this is me, Jan, saying goodbye for now.
And it's goodbye from Stephen. Goodbye.
This is the BBC.
This is In Touch, the magazine programme for people like me who are blind or partially sighted. I'm Peter Wight. Thanks for downloading this week's edition. Good evening. Tonight, it's a constant theme on In Touch that there's not much that can't be enjoyed when you're visually impaired. But circuses? We look at the role of audio description to introduce visually impaired children to clowns, contortionists and the rest of the circus paraphernalia. And after last week's special on technology, your down-to-earth solutions to down-to-earth problems. But first, Traveleyes is a company which offers holidays to visually impaired and sighted people, but with a twist. For a reduced price, the sighted holidaymaker agrees to guide and describe attractions for the visually impaired traveller, while blind customers pay the full whack. But Simone Gould has contacted us to question an aspect of their policy which she thinks discriminates against her. Simone has travelled happily with the company before. As well as her visual impairment, she has some hearing loss. And recently she was very upset to be told, after looking to book with them again, that in future she'd need to bring her own guide. Traveleyes told her, "We'd need you to bring your own sighted guide on all future holidays with us. This is so that they can support you with your hearing impairment, as our sighted travellers aren't expected or trained to assist with anything additional to vision impairment." Well, Amal Latif set up and runs Traveleyes. He is himself blind. And I asked him why this decision had been taken.
When someone has additional needs, then we do require that they bring somebody with them. And in this case, yes, if Simone's been with us before, we've probably had a discussion about the level of her hearing impairment. And at the time, I don't know, I'm not privy to the conversation, but if it seemed like it was going to be okay, that, you know, her hearing wasn't a huge problem, then we would have taken her on. But I guess the big test comes when you're out there, you know, live, you know, in location, and if the tour managers realise that additional support is required, that's why she would have to bring somebody with her. Our sighted travellers are just members of the general public who like the idea of coming on a trip where they've been asked to guide and describe the sites, and for which they receive a reduction in price. But if we ask them to do, you know, other duties as well, like, you know, to add that level of communication or the support that somebody with additional needs, then, you know, that's a totally different ballgame.
Isn't this rather exaggerating what would be necessary in this case? I mean, Simone makes the point that all she really needs is someone to remember to speak a little more clearly and maybe a little more loudly. You know, you don't surely need to go on a massive course to do that.
If that's what you're saying, you don't need to go on a massive course, but, you know, our experience is if people generally have a hard of hearing problem, and if it has become an issue, it means that they just can't hear what's happening in noisy places. And we've probably worked out that, you know, she's struggled to hear what's going on around her, and it's not healthy and safe for us to expect our sighted travellers to be supporting her for something that they're not trained to do.
But this is the kind of thing that blind people often get told. When there are problems with people on mainstream holidays, the implication is either that you're causing other people more trouble or you're causing other people on the tour more trouble. It isn't the fact, really, that Simone will know how to manage her own disability and how to tell people how they can help her.
Well, Traveleyes is the world's most accessible travel company. So what we're actually offering is we want Simone to come on the holidays, and we want her to feel fully supported on the trips as well. So if she does bring this person, we offer them a reduced rate. And no other travel company out there in the market offers that level of reduction to a caterer.
But she may still find herself paying for two people, whereas the other visually impaired people who go on your tour will only be paying for one.
So what Simone will be getting is a reduced rate for her sighted carer. So if she did go to any other travel company, she'd be paying double. You know, Traveleyes is a company as opposed to, you know, a charity, and I'm blind myself, and, you know, the reason why I set it up was because I felt, you know, frustration, you know, in the hands of mainstream travel companies. I totally see that, you know, if that is the situation, if she would have to pay herself, then it probably would work out a bit more expensive than her. But the upside is she's paying less with us than any other travel company, and she would feel fully supported.
Some people might think that this is an easy way for Traveleyes to sell two holidays for the price of one. You know, it means one less person you have to go to recruit to do this rather unusual thing on the holiday.
Well, sighted travellers do go for a reduction, so, you know, it doesn't directly help us, but, you know, we need to operate professionally. safely on the trip for the benefit of everyone. So we need to take into account the majority of our customers. We want everyone to have a wonderful holiday, and this is a very important step. So if something happened, we'd be sat around the table here saying why did Traveleyes mismanage the situation and not put the right support in place?
I mean, it does seem to me that the assessment here of who needs perhaps more help and who doesn't is a bit arbitrary.
Well, we are professionals in blindness and we're professionals in travel, but we don't claim to be professionals in, additional needs. So we discuss with that person, how they would like to be supported, what elements they need. And on that basis, we decide, a recommended way forward, which we would have done with Simone. So, some people can tend to understate the level of support that they need.
I should just say, as you've said that, I mean, Simone says that her level of need was understood and that if there was a problem, it should have been discussed with her.
I can't really comment on, the situation. I'm not familiar with it personally myself, but we did discuss it with her. We have, detailed booking forms, but then, on the trips, our tour managers realise that the level of support that they need is beyond what should be required of our sighted travellers who are on holiday too.
Amar Latif, your comments are welcome. And we'd also like to know the holiday experience which works best for you in catering for visual impairment. Now, have you ever been to one of these? Well, Lennon and McCartney's music captures completely for me the atmosphere of circus. But what would I know? I've never even been to one, never actually thought there was any point that as a totally blind person there'd be anything I could get from it. But Circus Star doesn't agree. It's a touring circus which specialises in introducing children to the big top whose circumstances have meant that they've never been before, including children who are blind and partially sighted. They've borrowed techniques such as audio description, which for many years has been used effectively to make TV, film and theatre more accessible by describing what's going on in the gaps between dialogue. Judith Halley from Circus Star has been telling me more about the company and how the project will work.
Circus Star is a touring circus and it's for children and families who find it difficult to access live arts events due to their access needs or economic circumstances. We are in touch with many organisations throughout the country. We do a 75 venue tour throughout the country and we donate the tickets for free to organisations and it's paid for by local businesses. So,
but they find the children.
Yes, they've got the families there and the children. And we also talk to local special schools or support organisations and people like that. Also see whether they've got children or families who can benefit. And it just came to our attention that some of the children were not getting the most out of the circus performance, because it's traditional circus that they're seeing. So there's clowns, there's acrobats, there's all sorts of things like that. It's all human, of course. But without some sort of audio description, they weren't getting the most out of the performance because, as an acrobatic act, there won't be so much narrative there. Our clown, there is narrative with her because she has an interaction with the audience and also with our ringmaster. But even so, it's much more of a visual show than it is a narrative, yeah.
What do you think the biggest challenges are in this kind of audio description?
Getting across, I would say, the sense of excitement, of shock. So some of the stunts the gymnasts do and the contortionists do are quite shocking. You think, wow, how on earth did they do that and come out of it the other end? And
the audio describers will go into quite a lot of physical detail about what's happening?
Yes, they do. So earlier this year, for instance, we'll be doing the audio described performance in the autumn tour, which starts in September. But earlier this year, they came to one of our shows in Crewe here, and they did training with the crew and the performers, and also did a dry run on the audio description as well. So they all come very well prepared. They know what it is that they're going to see, and then they take it from there.
Judith Halley. The audio description is being provided by Vocalise, which has a long track record in the field. The Cumitat has been talking to its Deputy Director, Toby Davey, and first to Ros Chalmers, who's a freelance audio describer who has been working on the project. Ros began by explaining the challenges of tailoring audio description to a young audience.
For the children, it was very much about working with Rachel, who was the education and outreach officer, to work out a different way of describing. Initially, we went in thinking the ringmaster might be able to describe live as he went along. Circus Star is quite a small organisation and everybody does everything. They are so busy. And because it's a circus act, there are health and safety things. And a lot of the time, the ringmaster was spending time making sure that things were safe for the artist. He just really didn't have the time to focus on doing description. So in that case, we came in to do the description. But we also thought about the experience beforehand. So Rachel developed a sensory box, which gave the feeling and the smell of the circus. So we had smells of candy floss, of which there is plenty, and hot dogs. And we had the feel of grease paint, which the clown used. We had the feel of sawdust, which was in the ring. So there was that kind of thing that she went out to groups and introduced them.
Much
to
more
begin
sensory
with.
rather than
Much
just
more sensory.
the audio.
Right. That's right. So then Toby and I went in to do some visual awareness, didn't we?
Yeah, we were training the performers because before the performance there'll be a touch tour for Circus Star. So we were training the performers as to how best to run a touch tour, how best to communicate and guide blind and partially sighted people and young blind and partially sighted people as well, because obviously there's probably different things you would do with a young person that you might do with an adult. And it was also them getting a sense of how best to get a blind or partially sighted young person to interact with various bits of props that they were using during the performance. And I think it was quite interesting seeing some of the performers when we did visual awareness training and we did guiding with them and getting them to look down because they're constantly looking up. Yeah, because they're not, obviously, when they're performing, they're not really looking down. So getting them to go up and down steps and do guiding exercises, I think, was quite an interesting exercise for them.
It was, because these are people who know exactly where their bodies is. They have to. They have to know they're in the air and they need to know where their hand is, where the other person's hand is who's going to catch onto them. And just to see them when they tried to work without sight, they found it much more difficult than most people because they rely very much on the sense of sight. You take that away from them and they did struggle. But the important thing was we were working with an international cast, and for some of them English was their one of 3 or 4 language. It may be their 4th language. So we had to use props in a particular way, and what we said to them is, what would you like to do? What are you prepared to do? So, for example, there was one artist who used an enormous ball, probably about a metre, a good metre in diameter, and she rolled it up. She stood on it and rolled it up and down a series of ramps using only her feet, and we got the children to stand on this ball. Obviously, we supported them. We got the children to stand on this ball and walk it up and down. So it builds muscle memory. So when I'm describing that, they've got an idea of what that artist might be feeling.
That sounds like fun, but presumably, that's before the performance.
That is.
What I was wondering, Ros, is what happens in terms of audio description if there's audience participation? I mean, that's what happens a lot at children's performances.
Yes.
That's how you keep children focused and involved often, isn't it?
It is. I mean, you've got to be. We're actually sitting in the auditorium with Circus Star. We're sitting in the auditorium, and there's an awful lot of excitement, obviously, going around. And the children in Circus Star, they are constantly relaxed performances, so children are not sitting there quietly. So we had the right equipment so that we could be heard without being invaded by that kind of noise. And yes, audience participation. The clown brings out 3 or 4 dads from the audience. He does an act where he's hit on the nose and he asks somebody to kiss his nose, kiss it better. And, that sort of thing. We need to get that across so that the children can join in the fun.
And what about what the other audience members are doing? Because if you're
Yes.
visually impaired, you can't see what your other audience members are doing. So if other audience members are kind of waving their hands about in response to something, will you say that? Will you say people in the audience are nodding or standing up or there's an ovation? Will you do that?
If anything that people can hear, we obviously leave them to hear it. But sometimes they played happy and everybody got up and danced. And we told the children that everybody's up and dancing, and they got up and danced as well. So it is very much in that kind of case. And when you go to a circus, part of the experience is being part of that crowd, and almost being given the go-ahead to do exactly what everybody else is doing if they want to.
Thank you very much, Ros. Toby, so give us the headlines on what's not to be missed in performances over the summer for children if you're wondering what to do with your visually impaired child over the holidays.
For young blind and partially sighted people, we've got Northern Ballet's The Little Mermaid, which has been audio described. There are things like Mamma Mia has been audio described, Warhorse for slightly older people, which is going around the country, that's going to be audio described. And for people who are interested in ballet as well, Matthew Bourne's Cinderella is going to be audio described in the autumn as well. So there's lots of audio described performances for young people out there.
Toby Davey with things to do in the summer, and before that Ros Chalmers. And Circus Star is on the road this autumn with free shows in 4 locations: Nuneaton, Milton Keynes, Luton and Leicester. Finally, you've been having your say about last week's programme on new technology. Charles Crisp was particularly interested in the growing technique of going online to get objects described to you, but he was keen we didn't forget about simple, low-tech ways of labelling. He says that for tins and items with metal lids, there are magnetic discs which can be used over and over again. The most useful one for me, says Charles, have been the waterproof labels. They can be fixed to clothing and they'll survive the washer. And he goes on, waterproofing is also handy in the greenhouse and the garden. Charles made some simple tags from thin plastic and stuck the label on them. So much better, he says, than elastic bands and blue tack. But Les Smithson won't hear a word against the humble rubber band. He says it can be wrapped around bottles so that I can tell my shampoo and toothbrush from other people's in the bathroom. I also use it to mark my stuff in the fridge and larder, and I put it around door handles so I can find my bedroom and bathroom when I'm staying in strange places like hotels. So, just the kind of down-to-earth suggestions there that we welcome. We'd also like your help with next week's programme. NHS England guidelines for providing visually impaired people with their medical information in a form they can actually read themselves or hear have been in place since 2015. So, has it made a difference to you? Are you getting your doctor's letters, your appointment notifications, test results in your preferred format? We'll be putting some of your experiences to NHS England next week. You can call our action line with that on 0800 044 044 for 24 hours after the programme. Email in touch at bbc.co.uk and you can visit our website to get the podcast. From me, Peter Wight, producer Lee Kumatat and the team, goodbye.